Uh, do we think everyone on board is attending this morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'd like to remind everybody to keep their microphone muted and only turn them on when you're ready to speak. And please announce your name when you're speaking so that your names can be recorded along with your statements. I'd move on to item B and ask Ms. Delia Luna to conduct the roll call.
Yes, sir. James Graves,
Present.
Dave Yelovic,
Present.
David Morris,
Present.
Flor Lujan. Yes, sir.
Present.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead.
Suzanne Smith, Dolores Compion,
Present.
and Jerry Bittner, presiding officer.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item C of the agenda, which is the approval of the meeting minutes. Board members have received the minutes along with the meeting materials. Is there anyone that has any comments with respect to those prior meeting minutes? If there are none, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to approve.
I'll make the motion to accept.
Have a second?
Dolores Compion, I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. I'll ask Ms. Delia Luna to announce the roll call, and we'll announce if the motion passes.
Yes, sir. James Graves,
Yeah.
yay.
Yay. I couldn't figure out whether to say yes or.
Either one is fine.
Okay.
Dave
Aye.
Yelovic,
How about aye?
David Morris,
Aye.
Flor Lujan,
Aye.
Dolores Compion,
I'll go with an aye.
Jerry Bittner, presiding
Aye.
officer. Motion passes. Thank you.
We'll move on to agenda item D regarding public comments. We did receive one emailed public comment. It's sent to the board beforehand along with the meeting materials. We're not going to read the comment publicly in this meeting. And one person wishes to speak with respect to an item they had brought up. And we'll get to that under agenda item G. That's a fellow by the name of Mr. Oscar Rodriguez, and he represents the Texas Association of Broadcasters. So we'll get to his comment in just a moment. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to item E, the staff reports, and I'd like to, at this time, call on Ms. Yvonne Lopez for the licensing division update.
Yes, good morning, members. I was newly selected to manage this program on October of 2022. This comes on the heels of Lisa Hodek's retirement on August 31st after 35 years. So congrats to Lisa. We wish her well, and I hope that she gets to do a lot of the things that we don't get to do when we're focused on working. And, you know, we have such a big population. The licensing division recently underwent a reorganization. What this will do is it'll create opportunities for staff to advance in their career path with TDLR. We currently have 17 vacancies just for this team. That doesn't include the vacancies outside of this team. Moving on to statistics, you'll see the totals for fiscal year 2022. That's September 1st of any given year through August 31st of the following year. And then we've got the numbers for fiscal year 2023, which just includes the first month of the fiscal year, which is all of September. Moving on, we continue to monitor work volumes. As a result of the reorganization, we're reviewing processes to see if any of them can be streamlined, and to ensure consistency from team to team. Previously, teams are doing things differently. We still accomplish the same goal, but we would like for there to be consistency between teams. That way, if staff move from one team to another team, there shouldn't be much of a difference except just in the review of applications. The mail-in applications for fiscal year 2022, this team between September 1st of 2021 through August 31st of 2022 received over 17,000 applications. Just to compare to what we saw last year compared to this year, in September of 2021, there were 1,345 applications. And this year for the month of September, we've already received 1,563 applications. So that concludes my report. Do you have any questions for me? All right.
Okay, if there are no questions for Ms. Lopez, we'll move on to item E2, the Customer Service Division, and for that, we'll call on Ms. Dawn Robinson for her report.
Good morning, Advisory Board members and TDLR staff. My name is Dawn Robinson. I'm one of the managers in customer service here with TDLR. Looks like my report didn't come over, but I do have those numbers. Looks like our emails are down from fiscal year 2021 to 2022. We went from 2,599 emails in fiscal year 2021 to 1,327 fiscal year to date 2022. Calls as well are down from fiscal year 2021 from 24,262 to fiscal year 2022 to 18,758. And that's all the stats I have for you. I have any questions, I'm here to assist.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Ms. Robinson? Not, we'll move on to agenda item E3, the Enforcement Division, and we'll call on Amanda Barrera for her report.
Good morning, board members. My name is Amanda Barrera, and I'm a prosecutor in the Enforcement Division. Today, we'll be discussing fiscal year 2022, which is very similar to fiscal year 2021, which is also included in your materials. In the ACR program, we received 8,766 complaints. These numbers reflect all the complaints received by the department in this program before they are actually opened or reviewed by a prosecutor. So as you can see, we have 1,056 consumer complaints, 7,679 criminal history, and 31 departmental complaints. Criminal history number seems a little high, but due to reorganization, we are now processing all the criminal history applications that come in. It's no longer shared with licensing at this point. So those are all the numbers reflected. Under our performance measures, we opened 854 cases. We closed almost 2,000 cases in this ACR program, and our average time to close was 306 days. We resolved about 46% of our cases within 6 months, and 10% of them resulted in disciplinary action. There's still about, there is 500 cases pending from fiscal year 2022. In this next graph, you'll see where these cases come from that were opened. We have 33% of criminal history, 4% departmental, and 63% consumer related. Next, we have the case outcomes. We had one case that went in front of the commission, 57 default orders, and 51 agreed orders. For the program as a whole, we assessed $300,750 in penalties, and we collected $93,575. We revoked 3 licenses, 13 were denied for criminal history. We informally resolved 979 cases and were able to obtain $63,795.68 in consumer restitution, which I did want to point out is $12,478 more than last fiscal year. So we were able to get a lot more restitution in this fiscal year for consumers. Next, you can see the trends where the consumer cases are specifically. We received 1,056 consumer complaints, and we opened 541 of those cases. We resolved 647 and issued almost 100 NOAVs. 84 consumer cases resulted in disciplinary action. The top 10 violations at opening and disciplinary action are the same, remain consistent over the fiscal years. The top 3 are criminal history, mechanical integrity, and contracting without a license. So the contracting without a license brings me to my next point. In an effort to combat unlicensed activity, on June 6th, enforcement investigator Robert Nino, Michael Russo, Martin Garcia, Eric Robledo, and investigator manager Art Arevalo conducted a week-long undercover sting operation in San Antonio. The National Association of State Contractors Licensing Agency actually did a national press release that included information on this sting. So thank you to our enforcement investigators for all your efforts. Also, last meeting, I mentioned the rollout of our web form for the ACR program. Advisory Board Member Campion asked for the percentages of complaints that were now being received through the web form. From the review of those complaints received, they were submitted in various ways, but from July 28th to September 30th, we had 69% of consumers use that web form. 6% were submitted online, which we determined that it was based off of possibly submitting an electrical case through the normal process and then realizing that there may be an air conditioning component to it and opening a case that way as well. 22% came by email and 3% came by mail. So I'm going to move into our case highlights. First case I have for you today is regarding John Richard Bennett, whose registered air conditioning and refrigeration technician registration was revoked by operation of law when he renewed his registration. It was discovered that he was imprisoned on February 9th, 2021, and so his license was automatically revoked by operation of law. The next case I have for you is against Mr. David P. Campos, who accepted liability for failing to perform the manual DSNJ heat load calculations at a job site prior to installing the new system. Mr. Campos was assessed an administrative penalty of $12.50, and he agreed to complete 8 additional hours, which he has complied with those terms. The next case is regarding Ms. Myra Judith Reyes, who accepted liability for offering to perform services without a contractor license. Ms. Reyes was contacted during one of our other stings in Katy and Cypress, Texas. Ms. Reyes was assessed an administrative penalty of $17.50, which she has paid in full. Next, we have Mr. Brian Blackburn, who had a default order entered against him for $4,000 for installing a 5-ton system at a home without a contractor's license. Lastly, we have Damian J. Deigel, who had a default order against him for $5,000 and revocation of his license. The order found that he misrepresented services provided when he installed a different chiller than what was paid for by the customer and what was noted on his invoice. That's all I have for you today, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Sure.
When you go back to your criminal history, my understanding is that y'all doing all the, let me see if I can ask the question correctly. They put in an application. The applicant says he has a criminal history. Is that what that 30-something% is on the chart we saw initially?
I believe in the pie chart, those are cases that are actually opened. So those are cases that are needing to be reviewed by the prosecutors and possibly determine whether they are fit for a license and if it needs to go to hearing if they're not. So those are actually opened cases. As far as the enormous amount of at intake, those are just the actual stack of papers that we have, they haven't actually been opened cases yet. They haven't been reviewed by a prosecutor or anything in that nature yet.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Ms. Barrera?
Dave Yelovic here, just kind of expanding on that, just looking at the sheer numbers. If the public were to look at this report like we're looking at today, does it say that a good majority of the people doing the REC work has criminal history? What are we telling the public with these numbers?
I'm not sure that it's necessarily saying that the majority of ACR has criminal history. Like I said, only 33% of those were actually opened, and we only denied 13 for criminal history. So it does take a little bit of seeing how this all interplays together. But I understand your concern on that original number. But it is
Way up at the top, what was it, 7,000 something?
right, and those are just like everything that we receive to be reviewed. Again, it's not an open case.
Dolores Compion, that kind of drives another question you may or may not be able to respectfully answer or have any insight to this, but on our initial intake of applications, what's the percentage of individuals who submit that I've had a ticket, or I've had a case, or I got something pending, or has that percentage increased? Or maybe this is a question for a different department, but just curiosity.
Sure. I don't have that specific number, and I can definitely find that for you for next meeting, or send it to you. There are our criminal history guidelines, so there are particular offenses that actually apply. So getting a ticket would not necessarily apply. But sexual contact or things like that would happen in the ACR field, that could pose a threat to our consumers might actually be, and that's what gets reviewed by the prosecutors. But as far as percentages, I can definitely get you those numbers.
Just curious if it was on the rise, or it's on the decline, or is it staying flat?
As far as I can tell, in the open cases in comparison to fiscal year 2021, it doesn't appear to be rising. It's just that number, because we're no longer sharing the responsibility, appears to be larger.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Any other questions for Ms. Barrera? Okay, if there are none, we'll move on to agenda item E4, which is the Education Examination Division. And for that report, we'll call on Ms. Rebecca Armas.
Good morning, Chair, Advisory Board members. My name is Rebecca Armas. I'm one of the team leads for the Education and Examination Division. And I'll just be providing you with some statistical updates today. If you scroll on to the second page, Delia, please. You had requested to look at the first-time pass rates. This is for fiscal year 2022. So you'll see as they're broken down by certified, commercial, and environmental there. And they're pretty consistent with what we have in previous fiscal years. On the second page, you'll see we've got the total statistics, or I'm sorry, the third page, Delia, my bad. You'll see the total statistics. My apologies that I just noticed an error on the current fiscal year for environmental B for the total pass rate. We will work on getting that statistic to you to give you an update, as it is not a 0% pass rate. But that, as you said, but for the most part, the consistency is there as far as all of the different levels of examinations and their pass rates. Again, we just encourage all of our candidates to please research that candidate information bulletin that gives them the breakdown of the content outline, what they need to study, and that'll assist with them being successful in passing their examination. We've got some other statistics in here regarding the on the next page for courses, and those you'll see if they fluctuate a little bit, because at the time when we take these statistics, there could be some that are in the process of being in renewal period. And that is all that I have for you, and I'll be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Armas? There are none. We'll move on to agenda item E5, the
Thank you.
Regulatory Program Management Division, and we will call on Mr. William Weatherly for his report.
Morning, board members and staff. It's William Weatherly.
Bill, we can't hear you.
Uh-oh. Oh, can you hear me now?
You're very, very faint.
Yeah.
Maybe,
may have to
maybe
yell
other
at
people
Bill.
can hear. I can't.
Okay, I'll speak up a little bit. How's that? Is that a little better?
And turn up your microphone feed.
See if I can do that. Okay, is that a little better? Is that too much?
Perfect.
Perfect.
I'll love this technology. All right. Well, I'll start again. I'm Bill Weatherly, the Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Program Chief and Chief Inspector. And I want to just follow up a little bit on Amanda Barrera's report and the high number of criminal history cases. Just wanted to remind you that there are over 51,000 in our population. That includes contractors and also technicians. Just a little perspective there. Personnel update. Troy Smart, who has been my assistant since January, very glad to have him. Just want to let you know that he is testing for his residential mechanical inspector certification. Although Troy is very, very accomplished, and but it does not hurt to have the the certifications and a little more credentials. Highlight some of our activity, public outreach. Troy and myself were guest speakers at the Houston TACA, which is the Texas Air Conditioning Contractors Association, their monthly meeting, and that was September 20th. The topics included the current state of the air conditioning industry, including legislative changes, TDLR's enforcement procedures and activity, the top 10 violations of ACR contractors, and the unlicensed air conditioning activity report. Also, just recently, last week, I was a guest speaker for the statewide TACA annual conference. They call it Air Conditioning Live. It was at the Lakeway Resort, and my section was Texas Law and Rules. It's very interesting that they have worked with our licensing division and our education division, and if the licensed contractors attend, and they attend, I think 4 out of the 6 breakout sessions, including my section at the end, Texas Law and Rules, so they can get signed off for their 8 hours of continuing education. So because of that, the last session was mine, and I had about 100 attendees. It was a very good session. Then going on in collaboration with our public information officer, Tila, put together a PSA that was basically along with the heating season. We talked about check your heating system for carbon monoxide leaks and other issues. And then on October the 10th, we were contacted by Univision of Houston, and I did an interview with them. And even though I'm not a Spanish speaker, they did very well and interpreted it well, I believe. So I was glad to do that. And then I always like to put a little industry update in. And today I'm going to talk about heat pumps real quick. Or heat pumps, a good alternative for whole house heating. And although heat pumps are capable of meeting the entire home heating needs, however, single or dual speed systems will likely rely on electric resistance heat at temperatures below freezing, which is the most expensive form of heating and puts the most strain on the electrical grid in this mode of operation. And of course, we all know what happens when we have a strain on the electrical grid in Texas. Now, electrical resistance heat also has to work when the unit goes into a defrost mode. So with a heat pump, then variable speed systems offer a greater opportunity for cold climate heating because the compressor is not limited to 60 hertz. you can actually oversize because it's variable speed. Does not mean that they're all cold climate capable. If you're a consumer and you're looking at the heat pump, make sure you ask for a cold climate heat pump that are made with different compressors, which some manufacturers can provide effective heat below freezing temperatures, and that would be especially in your North Texas areas. Consumers should ask for manufacturer's performance data at various temperatures. Depending on your climate, you may need to choose different speeds, dual stage, variable speed, a different type. There are geothermal and air source units as well. As a result, if you live in a cooler part of the state, harsher winters, it would be advisable to have a variable speed unit that is cold climate performance rated. And then in a warmer climate, it's not so so important. And that has always been the Achilles heel of a heat pump is when it's below freezing, they have a little harder time keeping up. So technology has come a long way on that, and so there is an alternative now. And then I've got some references on the bottom if you'd like to look at those. So, and that basically concludes my presentation. Any questions, I'll be glad to answer. All right, well, thank you very much.
I think, Mr. Bittner, you are muted.
We're going to move on. I'm sorry, I was muted. We're going to move on to item E6, the executive office, and we'll call on Ms. Mary Winston for her report on that item.
Thank you, presiding officer. Before I give my very brief report, Rebecca Armstrong has found the information that she was looking for, and so I had her just kind of stay online so she can give that to us to complete her report.
Good morning again, Chair and Advisory Board members. I just wanted to update you on the September statistic. It is 22% for the B examination. And it's just for the month because we don't have the full, at the time that we were collecting the report, we just had the full month of September. So it's not really indicative of what the pass rate really is. It's just that short period of time. That's why it's so low. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. If no one has any questions for her, I will proceed with my report. Is that okay?
Very good, thank you.
Awesome. So the only thing I have for executive report today is our communication outreach statistics. But before we go into that, I just want to kind of orient us to what's going on in our world, which could affect your world. So in just a couple of short months, we will be entering our legislative session. And then that means that we will have certain directives, certain statutes that are passed by our legislature. And then we would go into bill implementation. That would mean we would be implementing those bills passed during that session. Then we have strategic planning that goes on to address what are we going to do next go around? What do we need to continue to be a success? And finally, we will make a legislative appropriations request. What is the monies that we need to continue to do the work that we've done, and what can we do better? So we are just at the end of this process, and we provided that update in our last meeting, but we're about to start that process all over again in early January. But today we just have some statistics that just tell us how our website is working. We say working, we put up content, is it being effective? How many of our licensees are members of the public, but typically licensees or those who want a license go to these pages. So for the last 6 months until from April 16th to October 15th, the website, the web page for ACR Contractors has over 207,000 views. That's about 1,100 plus views per day. 35% of those folks are doing so from a desktop, but mostly we have 64 who are from a smartphone accessing this information
and that, look, that 1% just still hanging in, that it's from their tablet. I want to then finish up. We've moved. Dale, can you back up a little bit? Thank you. That why these folks are coming in to look at the website. And this is good news for us in the industry, that they want to apply for a contractor license or for technician certification. We have exam information that is being requested, as well as laws and rules and how to apply for a technician registration. So it seems that we're on point for what we're offering, what people are viewing. And this is my short report today. I think I saw David in David Gonzalez, our Deputy Executive Director, in. If he had anything he wanted to add, I wanted to give him an opportunity to say something before we moved on. David, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Thank you, Ms. Winston. David Gonzalez, Deputy Executive Director of TDLR. Just the importance, reiterating the importance of the legislative appropriations request process. And during the legislative session, we worked hard to gain the reputation. The advisory boards help us with the work that we do, but at the end of the day, the budgets that are approved and considered by the legislators really make a difference in how we do our work. And this particular legislative appropriations request is one of the most significant we've made. Y'all heard the report last time. We're prioritizing staff and a licensing system and a few other things that are important to us, but it will be exciting. I think one of the most exciting years for TDLR, and we've had a lot of them, a lot of growth, a lot of programs that have been transferred to us, but this one here is really where the rubber hits the road, because we've grown so large. We've got so many multiple licensing systems that it really is important this year to follow and track those legislative appropriations requests to see how we fare. And that's all I wanted to share, just to make sure to stay tuned during the legislative session.
Very good. Ms. Winston, I have one question with regard to item 1, for the top reasons for visiting the site. That number 1, it says apply for a contractor license. Does that also include the people that are contacting the site to renew?
It's just informational. So to renew from this, that's not the renewal page to do that, but this is informational, and this would actually, Mr. Bittner, yes, it's going to be anyone who clicks on this, because we're counting clicks. So if they click on this, looking to renew, looking for information, yes, that's going to include this number.
Very good. Thank you.
Dolores Compion, this is more of a not a question directed at any particular person, but I was just kind of curious. I'm still stuck on the criminal history thing. I'm kind of figuring out how to digest that. If we racked and stacked that percentage against the other programs, where would the ACR land? I see that there's a comparison to the total TDLR, which is 26% versus the ACR 30%. So when I, in my simple math, if we got 27, 28 programs, that criminal history, that 30%, that's kind of a little bit of an alarming number gauged against the other. So, but just like I said, that kind of caught my attention. I've been stuck on it. So,
Dolores, if you will
Yes.
allow us, it's definitely something that we highlight in our enforcement statistics, but that's not the percentage of licensees that we get applications for. Remember, I think Bill Weatherly was trying to address that point by letting you know, I think he mentioned 51,000 licensees is what we have. So this is not 30% of 51,000. This is 30% of the enforcement workload. But you know what? Those statistics are important, and they're actually important to our commissioners as well, because they've been champions of the ability to get people back to work, those have had past infractions, and this is across the board with other programs, not just ACR. So that's data that I think we're going to start tracking a little bit better. We may be able to find ways to do it in ACR. I don't want to make a promise that I can't keep, but we'll look into it to see if we can determine what fraction or percentage of our total licensee population compared to others, if we can. We've got other programs that may make it easier for us to get that level of detail, but right now I'm not sure we can do it in our tulip system, which is what ACR runs through. But if we can, we will have those numbers for you. If not for the next advisory board, we can have our advisory staff follow up with you afterwards with that information.
Yeah,
So
I appreciate that. I'd like to.
I'm sorry, Mr. Campion and David. Amanda is messaging me in the background, and she's just clarifying something that she didn't know, that it's not just people that are admitted to criminal history. We do background checks on everyone every time they apply or renew a license. But if I understand your concern, because like on the face of it, it's like 30% versus. But if we can break that down a little bit more, and now I have Mr. John Medlock, who is the manager, and Griselda Perez, who is also one of our folks from from enforcement, and we actually have numbers, and it's coming up slowly. Okay, so I'm going to, and we can provide this information. It was my thought that we would give you a little bit of a heavier or more in-depth explanation for our meeting that would be coming up. But I actually have statistics here for everyone that applies and that, let's see, that we have criminal histories for. So for air conditioning and refrigeration, we have almost 50,000 licenses issued or renewed, and this is through August 2022. And the amount that were referred for criminal history was 15%. So it's not a huge percentage. We do have programs that have larger percentages that were submitted. And I will stop there because I want the folks who do this work to have that opportunity to flesh that out for you and give a slightly clearer representation. That's something we want to put on our agenda, so we can definitely talk about that next time to kind of give a clearer picture. So thanks, Amanda, Griselda, thanks, John, and thanks even Tila, who was chiming in, our public information officer, to kind of try to help clear that up. But we'll get a report together that does maybe a clearer job of letting you know how this looks in consideration of all of our licensees, and that it's not actually that it's so much more, but we'll present it in a way that is more comprehensive. Does that sound good, Mr. Campion?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead now and move on to agenda item F. There was a proposed statutory change attached to the meeting materials. I think it was the last page of the meeting materials with respect to allowing assignment of contractor licenses to more than one company. And for a discussion on that point, we'll ask Mr. Doug Jennings to comment.
Thank you, Chairman, and hello, everyone. My name is Doug Jennings, and I'm an Assistant General Counsel for the department. We have a little bit of a different item today to shake things up a little bit. Representative J.C. Jetton, who represents Fort Bend County in the Texas House of Representatives, has been kind enough to share with us an advance copy of a piece of legislation he plans on filing this upcoming legislative session. And as Chairman Bittner just mentioned, it would allow air conditioning and refrigeration contractors to assign their license to more than one air conditioning and refrigeration company if the person owns at least 50% of that second company. And Wendy Lojo, who is Representative Jetton's senior advisor, has been kind enough to join us today. And she may have some questions, but she'll be our contact. I will share the bill. I'll put it on my screen in just a second, so everybody can see it. Is that visible for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, great. Seeing thumbs up. Just wanted to put the text of the bill here for you in case you hadn't had time to review it. So you'll see those underlined sections are new language that will be proposed during this legislative session. The ununderlined portion, of course, is the statute as it currently reads. And you'll see that current statute says in subsection C, a person holding an air conditioning and refrigeration contractor license may assign that license to only one permanent office of one ACR contracting company. So the proposed amendments would be in C and D, and that would allow a person to assign their ACR contractor license to more than one company if they own at least 50% of the second or subsequent company. And just wanted to open the floor. Wendy, is there anything you'd like to add to the discussion right now?
Hi, good morning. No, there's really nothing I want to add. We were just kind of interested in hearing y'all's perspective and just kind of making sure there's no unintended consequences if we do decide to move forward on this. So thank you all for your input in advance.
Thank you, Wendy, and we'll just open the floor.
Well, this is
Dolores Compion.
Go ahead, Dolores.
There was a, I haven't been up to speed on memorizing all the rules and laws under the chapter, but would that fall under, wasn't there something in there, refresh my memory, about dispatching from multiple locations, one license, dispatching from multiple locations? Would that have to be changed as well if there's some consideration for moving forward on assigning one license to multiple companies?
Mr. Campion, I'm not aware of that statute, but I'll have to take a look through the chapter. It could be that another provision may need to be amended. It's likely that there will be more than one rule change that would be needed to be made to conform with this change if it was adopted.
Doug, you're fading out. We heard part of it. I heard more than one rule change.
Yes, I'm not aware of any change to the statute, any additional change to the statute, but we definitely would need to make conforming changes to the rules.
This is Bill Weatherly, Air Conditioning Refrigeration Program Chief. Mr. Campion, I think what you were referring to is that if you can assign your license to only one permanent office, there was a section there that said you could have another office if it was only for storage of equipment. It wasn't for dispatching. In other words, you can have another office in another city, like in a metroplex for that. So that is there. But then I also would like to provide some perspective on this and just remind everyone that the only supervision required for an air conditioning license is that one air conditioning contractor, and it's general supervision. We do not have a tiered supervision level like in plumbing or electrical, where we have apprentices and journeymen that can supervision on site. The only supervision is that air conditioning contractor. So let's say that you owned a business in Dallas and one in Houston and one in San Antonio, and you reside in Dallas, but you own 50%. Who is going to supervise the technicians and the folks that are actually working out there? It's just general supervision now. I wish that we did have a tiered system, but we do not. So air conditioning is a little bit different. So I'm not speaking on, for, or against this bill. I just want to provide some perspective that that yes, we are going to, I believe, lose supervisory capabilities if we provide that. Just perspective, I ran a large air conditioning and plumbing company in Austin for many years, and of course, I wasn't on every job site. You know, I had technicians that I could count on, but it's not in the law that that direct supervision comes when you're on a job site. So technically, you could hire an 18-year-old that had no experience and in every city and put them out there with no supervision. So I'm a little concerned about that. I just wanted to bring that up in perspective.
Yeah, Mr.
Dolores Compion. Go ahead, Mr. Bittner. My apologies.
Jerry Bittner, I share Mr. Weatherly's concern when I saw this. It's precisely because the responsible party for ensuring mechanical integrity of the systems is the license holder. And, you know, we see an awful lot of complaints and from the consumers that deal with that kind of issue of mechanical integrity being a problem. And I share that concern that if this was to be enacted, there's no limitation on how many companies somebody could own more than 50% of. And certainly one individual cannot be ensuring the mechanical integrity of the installations that take place under his license if they're spread like peanut butter. So I just can't see that this is going to be very effective. And I share Mr. Weatherly's concern because we don't have a tiered system as some of the other crafts do.
At Dolores Compian, I kind of share some of the same thoughts. I have a more of a hypothetical type response here. Hypothetically, if they do move forward and one license is granted for multiple companies, if that licensee should ever go into the enforcement and be suspended, will that apply to all the subsequent companies that are under that license? Will they immediately get a cease and desist order as well? Now, that's just the, as my brain kind of works that way in a strange way. So,
Mr. Compion, Doug Jennings, Assistant General Counsel. I don't believe we would send a cease and desist immediately, but yes, if a contractor was assigned to those multiple companies, and was suspended or revoked, that those companies would need to find another contractor. That's correct.
So I think the answer is that enforcement action would ensue, not necessarily a cease and desist, but the process for enforcement would proceed in this case. This is an awesome opportunity to take a peek beforehand. I spoke very briefly about the session coming up in January and this possibility, and just to provide this insight, which we often ask for our stakeholders, including our licensees, for input on things that are coming down the pike. But for advisory boards, such as yourself, you are the ears and eyes and typically the mouths of your industry. So I know that you are providing Ms. Lojo just really good information to move forward with this consideration for this statute, for this bill. So I don't want us to hog her too much, but I'm going to step back and let us keep talking if we have more information to provide. So thank you, Ms. Lojo, for being here.
Thank you guys for having me, and I do appreciate your input. Can I follow up with one little question and to help me kind of understand how this works? It's my understanding that there is a possible workaround if and this was actually brought to us by one of our constituents who owns a one business that does refrigeration and cooling repair, and he also wanted to get into like residential HVAC business, and he couldn't assign his license. It's a totally different business. And so he couldn't assign his license to both, but he wanted to be able to do both things. And so it was my understanding that there's a potential workaround, and Doug, you might be able to kind of talk about this better, where he would have created like one shell or one bigger company that housed both like sub companies, in which he would have one license, but he could still do the two different businesses. And so I just kind of wondering like how like some of these concerns with and I understand like that the supervision, like, but how does like the current system where people are kind of finding that workaround, how does the supervision work for that? Am I making any sense now? Sorry.
Wendy, thank you. And again, Doug Jennings, Assistant General Counsel. It does it does pose an interesting question. Under the current law, you may only assign that license to one permanent office of one air conditioning and refrigeration company. And it has been practiced in the past that one company that perhaps owns and that one or two different companies could be assigned that license. I think that does pose the same supervision challenges and mechanical integrity challenges. Bill, would you care to weigh in on that?
Yes, it doesn't really change a lot. It doesn't change the supervision tier at all. You have the supervision, mechanical integrity, and it's hard enough if you own a company that where you have multiple technicians. I had 12 to 18 technicians working under me, so I did a lot of field work. You know, I couldn't go out on every site, but you have to try to maintain control. And, you know, a really good air conditioning contracting company will provide training for their employees, but those levels of training are not prescribed. Okay. So as I said before, if you owned a air conditioning company and a refrigeration company, they both need supervision. So you on either one of them, you can put an 18-year-old out there with no, experience at all. And it's up to you to supervise them. So do you want to put an 18-year-old with a torch out on the job? You know, and just a question. I mean, there's some basics in air conditioning refrigeration, the way it was set up, that I think requires that one location. Now, what you're talking about is doing business as. If if his air conditioning, the person you talked about, if his air conditioning environmental company and refrigeration company were in the same location, okay, he could have a parent company and he could have a DBA for both. Okay, but he's in one location, dispatching from that one location. So, that still doesn't solve the supervision problem. It does a little bit because you're going from one location and you see your technicians every day. But it's an issue. Like I say,
Yeah.
plumbing and electrical have that. They have apprentices and they have journeymen. And journeymen can supervise on-site direct supervision so many apprentices. And so that's a different tier. That's a different, and so it's a whole different thing. You know, I hope that answers or gives a little bit of perspective.
Yeah.
It does. And I really, again, I appreciate your input. I mean, this is the reason that we wanted to bring it before this advisory board, is to kind of identify things like this. So we definitely appreciate it.
Yeah. One of the easiest workarounds that comes to mind with respect to this need for a licensed individual for another company, that all that has to happen is this particular individual who owns two companies, he can assign his license to the primary company, which is this refrigeration business, and all he has to do is hire another individual that has a contractor's license, and that individual can assign his license to his HVAC business, and the problem is solved. And you've addressed very completely and succinctly the supervision requirement, because the individual that he hires that has a valid Texas HVAC contractor's license can supervise the employees out of that separate HVAC business. It's a very easy problem to solve by the individual, by just simply hiring a licensed individual. And you don't have to change the laws to accomplish that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd like to weigh in on the large company about kind of how we handle things. We've got like 350 employees, and me as the primary license holder, I can't be out there on every single job supervising every one of these guys. But we have multiple project managers, and many of them are license holders. They're just not the primary license holder. And we've got multiple companies, but we also have a license holder for each one of those companies. So my opinion is we need to leave the rules the way they are and not change it, where you can do multiple companies with a single license.
Okay, any other comments on this while we're on item F? If I know we're not going to solve anything today, we're not going to have a vote or anything like that. So I think it was very informative for the people involved who are looking at this statutory change.
Dolores Compion here. Doug, is this kind of I know this is beyond our preview, but since it's kind of an open discussion here, is the intention here is to run a standalone company to limit whatever liability may be? Like Mr. Graves, your company runs under one umbrella, and so whatever Graves Mechanical does under that umbrella, it's all it's one brand. Is the intention here to separate brand issues because air conditioning is a little bit difficult than refrigeration and chillers? Is I'm not seeing the backstory behind it. Just a curiosity type question.
To Ms. Lojo on the intent of the bill, as I really can't speak to it.
Hi, and again, I don't know how well I can speak to it other than the explanation the constituent gave us, which was just that he was involved in one business that was the refrigeration and cooling, and then kind of wanted to go into business kind of with maybe like a different group of people. I'm unfortunately not very clear on that, but I wanted to do more residential air conditioning and wanted to be able to do both businesses under one license. I don't know
This
if
is
that's
Bill Weatherly again. I jump in here. I have actually talked to the gentleman that you're talking about.
okay.
You know, in the past couple of months ago, and he wanted to buy into another business, the environmental business, but he wasn't going to be a 50% owner. But then they're two separate businesses, and so that was his dilemma. He couldn't do a DBA. But I want to just chime in on Jerry Bittner and Jimmy's point. It was a great point. Although I was a license holder and ran a medium-sized air conditioning plumbing company, I was not the owner. It was a legacy company, and so you do not have to be the owner to hold the license. And as Jerry said, if you got that separate company, just hire someone that has the license, and they can provide that supervision on that second company. And more supervision, the better. I've looked at over 50 cases and turned them back to prosecution this year. Just want to let you know that, and that's not all of them that are out there. So, we need to protect our consumers.
Well, thank you. I appreciate again all of the input, and this kind of just explains why we wanted to come to you guys in the first place, just to kind of show this to you and get feedback to see whether or not we want to proceed. So thank you.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and move on to item G. There's a discussion.
Mr. Bittner, Mary Winston, TDLR. Doug is trying to say thank you to Ms. Lojo, but I see his lips moving and nothing coming out. But thank you so much for coming here and providing that. We're having a little bit of audio difficulty. Thank you so much. And let us know if we can be of any other assistance to you.
As well. Dolores Campion, thank you so much.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Bittner.
No problem. We'll go ahead and move on now to item G, which is the discussion regarding the removal of the requirement to recite contractor license numbers and radio advertisements. And we have the speaker, Mr. Rodriguez. I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for coming here and providing.
When you begin to speak, please state your name and who you represent. And understand you have 3 minutes within which to speak. We'll go ahead and move on now to item G. The board will be able to ask some questions and make some comments. And so if you understand those instructions, you can start whenever you're ready.
Mr. Rodriguez, Mary Winston, one more time. I think I hear the meeting playing in the background. You probably want to silence YouTube so it won't interfere because it's going to be a slight time delay. Okay.
You begin to speak. Please state your name and who you represent.
Awesome. Thank you. As our presiding officer said before I so rudely interrupted, the floor is now yours, sir.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, Mr. Rodriguez.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you all. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Oscar Rodriguez. I'm president of the Texas Association of Broadcasters. We're an advocacy organization, 501c6, representing the interests of the 1,300 plus radio and television stations that are licensed by the Federal Communications Commission to serve local communities throughout the state of Texas. We're not the cable industry. We're not the TV or radio satellite industry. We're your local broadcasters that serve distinct communities throughout the state of Texas. I come to you today on behalf of our local radio broadcasters to address one of many changes we've seen take hold in the advertising marketplace, which has been completely transformed by the internet over the past 2 decades. One of the key changes is seen in the length of spoken advertisements, those that appear on the radio, just audio only advertisements. It used to be that 60-second ads were the norm, but now it's more common to see 30-second, even 15 and 10-second ads on air and online. Our local radio broadcasters are reporting to me that they're increasingly losing some advertising buys from local HVAC shops because the shorter ad lengths that are increasingly preferred cannot easily accommodate the license number. And so what we are asking is for you to consider revising the advertising rules to permit HVAC contractor ads on radio only to forego announcing the license number, provided the vendor prominently displays their license number on their website or other internet site where they promote their business. We're not proposing changes to other advertising regulations. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anyone have any questions?
Dave Yelovich here. I'm just curious, what has brought this about and why just this one thing? If it's just, is it a time constraint situation in the spot, or what does this come from?
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking. So there are a couple of things that have happened in terms of how people consume media. And one of the things that we've seen certainly is the shortening of attention spans. So that is why very often businesses choose to forego a 60-second ad and maybe even a 30-second ad. They want short bursts of information, and that's what audiences tend to respond better to. And so it is then a world now where, again, we're not radio stations aren't necessarily airing a lot of 60-second ads. They are shorter ads. And so in that construct, then the squeezing in, if you will, of the license number becomes a challenge. And then we've had numerous concerns expressed as where they go, well, you know what? I don't have to include, it's easier for me to do a display ad online with this HVAC thing, license number, rather than an on-air radio ad. And so what we're trying to do is preserve the opportunity for local radio broadcasters to work with their local business partners to continue promoting their business. And so in that universe of shorter ad lengths, the license number itself is presenting a challenge.
Yeah. This is Jerry Bittner. Absent the recitation of the license number in the advertisement, how does the consumer, either the consumer or the broadcaster that's proffering the advertisement, how do they know that the individual who's advertising is licensed?
Well, certainly the consumer certainly could be protected by ensuring that, again, the provision or the caveat that we're recommending is that any print advertisement, any visual advertisement, any internet advertisement that they have would continue to include that license number. And then with respect to the transaction or the business experience between a vendor and the broadcaster, they can certainly be directed to provide.
Yeah, there would be no assurance that, for example, anyone who advertises on radio, there's no requirement that they have a website. Maybe a lot of these companies that that advertise don't have websites. They don't support that kind of infrastructure. They just advertise on the radio. So again, absent the recitation of that number, and if this individual doesn't have a website, how does either the consumer or the broadcaster ensure that the person that's advertising is indeed licensed?
Well, certainly, it's certainly always behooves the consumer to ensure that the contractors they're working with are licensed, and require and request that proof of license when they're doing business with them. So that's how we would see it play out in that realm. We're not sure with respect to which businesses or what kind of internet presence businesses have. Certainly, it has become the norm really for businesses to have some kind of online presence because so much of our lives is conducted online. So we haven't done the research to survey how many HVAC contractors have websites, but it is certainly our experience that most of our businesses, most of our advertisers do.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Mr. Rodriguez?
Flor Lujan. I believe we're already having a lot of challenges with non-licensed individuals. To miss that 1 second of mentioning a license.
Anyone else have any questions? If not, I want to move on to Mr. Jennings to let him provide some commentary on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Victor. Can everyone hear me? Great, thank you. It's been a bit of an adventure today. I just want to thank Mr. Rodriguez for attending the meeting today. Board, so I think in terms of next steps, if this is a change that the board would like to consider, that will need to be a rule change. And what we'll do in the background is try to come up with some options for you in the event that you would like to pursue this. Of course, it is at your it's your decision, but we will try to provide you with a number of options so that you can decide whether or not you would like to propose changes to the rules. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Rodriguez, thank you for being here and for providing your commentary for the board.
Thank you for having me and for your questions. We very much appreciate it, and I look forward to working with you and your team to try to address this to the degree that we can.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead now and move on to item H, which is the recommendations for agenda items for the next board meeting. If there's any members have any recommendations for the next meeting, if you can provide them here, Delia will put them on the list and we'll include them in the next meeting materials distribution. Okay, if there are no recommendations for any additional agenda items, we'll move on to item I. Delia will pull the board at a later time with respect to the next upcoming board meeting. With that, we'll go ahead and move to item J, which is adjournment. And the time I see on my display is 11:09 a.m. And with that, I'll announce that the meeting is adjourned.